welcome to episode 18 of Pins and Needles. My name is Zoe. I live in South Wales in the UK with my husband Dave, my 3 lovely kids and Jim the dog. You can find me on Ravelry as BFG, and we have a podcast group in there as well, so search for Pins and Needles podcast in the forums tab and come and join us. I'm on Instagram as Pins and Needles UK, and you can contact me through Rav, through Instagram, or you can send me an email, which I'll pop in just by here. I've had quite a few new subscribers over the last 2 weeks, so thank you to everyone who clicked the red button. Welcome to any newbies and welcome back to any regular ones. It's been 2 weeks. I podcast every single 2 weeks, and as usual, it's been particularly busy. I did want to start off with an apology. My last episode was just a shocking quality. I'm not sure if it was just a very grey day or if I accidentally hit a setting on my phone camera. But anyway, it was really grainy, and a couple of you, did kindly comment that you struggled through watching it. So I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for watching through till the end if you did, and hopefully this one's a bit better. It's a brighter day today, and I've turned off the overhead light, so hopefully this will be a bit easier on the eye, so I am sorry about that. A quick mention of what I'm wearing. It is really cold in Wales today, so I'm wearing my squishiest shawl, and this is a pattern called the Duchess of Devonshire. It's a DK weight shawl written by Kay Jones of the Bakery Bears. You can find her on Ravelry as Bryony Bear, or maybe Bryony Bears. I can't remember, but I will link it down below in the show notes. I put timestamps and details of everything I mentioned down below in the show notes. I'll also put them in the Ravelry thread as well. So if you want to skip my chatty section at the start, then just check for the timestamps in the notes and you can go straight to the bit that you're interested in. I have my sheepy mug. My mum bought me my sheepy mug, and it's got hot squash in it again. Somebody left a comment on a previous video. Hot squash is like fruit cordial. It comes in all different flavours, and I like apple and blackcurrant flavour, and I make it with hot water in the winter. Like I've said, tea goes cold doing a podcast, and so hot squash. Right, so official Happy New Year to everybody. This is my first podcast of 2017. I'm not usually that fussed about New Year. My New Year feels more like September, with the seasons changing and the kids go back to school. But actually, I've quite welcomed a fresh start this time round. Lots of podcasters choose a word for the year, which I've always thought wasn't my kind of thing. But actually, I've chosen a word for 2017, and my word is change. There is a lot that has to change in my life at the moment. We've got some changes going on personally. We are having my house rewired in February half term, which is going to be an unbelievable job. We live in a Victorian semi-detached house on the coast. It's 3 stories, it's pretty enormous, and I mean a total rewire. They're going to be pulling up every carpet, all the floorboards. They're going to be digging channels in all of the walls. I mean, it's the full Monty. So the guys that are doing that for us, we've known for years. So basically we're going to give them keys to the house and walk away. I'm going to go to my mother's with the children because they have a school holiday for a week about then. Dave will be in and out of the house a bit and working the odd shift so he can be around if they have any queries. So that's going to be a massive change, because once the electrics are fixed, then we can start painting. We've never redecorated this house. We've been here 11 years. We've decorated the children's bedrooms, but everything else is basically as we found it. So once the electricians are done and the channels are plastered back in, we can crack on with that. And because they're literally going to be going through every room, moving furniture, pulling things out, Dave and I are taking the opportunity to go through everything, every drawer, every cupboard, everything, and try and recycle, donate or throw away as much as we possibly can. Now, when you have children, there is just a certain level of clutter that you cannot get past, but certainly in terms of our own possessions, you know, kitchen equipment, clothes, anything like that. So that's going to be a big change for us. I don't have a problem getting rid of things, so it's quite refreshing. So that's a big change. We need to shake things up at work as well. We've got some big plans for this year and we've already made a start on some of those. So that's why it's been a particularly busy 2 weeks. We've had normal shifts and lots of grand plans and some bits of building work we've been doing at the gym as well. So super busy. I also, I got to do it because I'm about to say it on the internet. I want to run my first 5 kilometre race this year. I've been doing the Couch to 5K. I've got the app on my phone and I started that, I think, at the end of November. So I'm just over halfway through that. And I don't know if park run is a thing in the States, but it is in the UK. And it's an organised 5 kilometre race that takes part in lots of different places all over the UK on Saturday mornings. And there's one that happens on Barry Island. So I'm going to work my way through the Couch to 5K programme and then I'm going to do park run. Yes, I am. I also want to get back up to deadlifting 80 kilograms regularly as well. So I've got some fitness and health goals as well. In terms of my crafting goals, both knitting and sewing, I do have some. There are years when I make whatever I like. I don't plan anything. I don't sort anything, I just do it. Not going to do that this year. I'm going to have limited time because of all the work changes. So I really need to plan out what I really want to make for sure, and get that sorted. So I think what I'm going to do is make a separate vlog basically, and I will turn out all of my knitting stash and all of my fabric stash, show you what I've got and try and start pairing up yarn and patterns or fabric and patterns and make myself like a hit list. So I know exactly what I want to make and roughly when I want to have it done by. The thinking is that I can think once at the beginning of the year, get everything sorted, and then no matter how busy I am, it will just be grab and go for crafting projects. So I'll film that separately, I think, and try and upload that as a 15 or 20 minute vlog at some point in the future. So keep your eye out for that. You can have a nose through my stash. Yeah, there are some treasures in there that I'd like to share. So that should be quite an interesting one. There's a little bit of knit along and make along news. Obviously, my Newfangled make along started on the 1st of January. It runs until the last day of February, and there's 2 threads in the Ravelry group, a chat thread and a finished objects thread, and we already have 6 finished objects. Yay! We've got some box bags, some brioche knitted items, some really lovely sort of parcel tags with a little brass eyelet thing in the top. So do nip over and have a look at those. If you haven't started yet and you'd like to join us, please do. It's never too late to start. And I will show you my make along items as I get to those sections a little bit later. I wanted to remind you all that the hashtag #BlackerPodKAL starts on the 19th of January. That's the knit along that is linked to the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which happens in March. And again, if you search that hashtag, knit something with Blacker Yarns, get a discount at their stand. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that Katie from the Inside Number 23 podcast has started a year-long Harry Potter knit-along. She's a huge Harry Potter fan, and this knit-along runs for the full 12 months of 2017. You can enter something every month or just here and there as you please. But again, she has a thread in her podcast group, So either watch her podcast vlog on it on YouTube or nip over to the threads and have a look. Right. Right, on to pins, my sewing section. I showed you last time my dressmaker's dummy that my mum bought me for Christmas, and I was trying to decide on a name. So huge thanks to Carie of the Creative Obsession podcast, hi Carie, who suggested Demelza the dummy. Now, if any of you are Poldark fans, either the novels or the new BBC series, Demelza is Mrs. Poldark. And she is tall and beautiful with red hair, and I am tall with red hair. So I'm really hoping, obviously, that by naming Demelza, at some point I will be able to kiss Aidan Turner because I love him. Right, so this is my Newfangled make-along sewing project. I'm making Butterick 5537. I'm going to be making two versions of these. The one I've got on Demelza at the moment is my wearable toile. So I was going to make a short sleeved version with shorts. And then once I've perfected the fit on that, I'll make myself a second pair, long arms and long sleeves, out of a floral flannel. So yes, Butterick B5537. I am using one of my grandma's old sheets. So I had a limited amount of fabric, and obviously it had been well used, so some parts of it were a little bit faded. So I was kind of doing a little bit of jiggery-pokery with my pattern placement to try and make the best of it. So if it doesn't look terribly consistent in colour, that is quite true to life. It's faded in parts, but it's fine. I love the print, and there's a certain confidence boost that comes with knowing if you make a complete pig's ear of something, the fabric was basically free, so it's a bit more freeing. You're not worrying about cutting into £20 worth of fabric. Right, so this pattern comes in small, medium and large sizes. I was unsure whether to do the small or the medium. A couple of people have suggested to me that I measure the pattern pieces themselves so I know exactly how much ease there is in the pattern. I checked the pattern pieces and the instructions and the packet, and nowhere does it tell you how much ease is built into the garment. And because of the way certainly the front pattern piece was drafted, I tried measuring the pattern pieces and I wasn't confident I could get an accurate measurement. So what I did, I always trace my sewing patterns first. So what I did was I traced the small and the medium, and as it happens, the sleeves are set in flat, and then you zoom all the way down the sleeve and down the side seam to finish the top. So I thought, given that that's quite a quick sew, I'll make the medium, just make it as it is, and then if I do want to go down to a size small, it's a simple seam to rip out, and I can lay it out fairly flat and recut it down to a small, because there's only the shoulder seam. So right, this is the front pattern piece, which I found, it took me a while to get my head round. Basically, if I show you on Demelza, the front facing is built in. So there's the interfaced facing, and it comes out like this. And then you turn this to the inside. But it took me a while to work that out because this is the pattern piece for the front. So here's the centre front line, and here's a fold line. So everything this way is interfaced. And if I show you, yeah, this is the cutting edge of the size medium, and this dashed line is the size small. And you can see that there is a significant difference both in the arm side here and in the side seam. So yeah, I'll sew it up as a medium, and then I can recut it after I've sewn it if I need to, just to unpick a quick seam. It's coming out very long. I do want to keep up with this hashtag sewing tool on Instagram, you know, contributing to building a database of adaptations to patterns for the taller sewer. So I was wondering if I would have to lengthen the shirt on this, and there is a line on the pattern to cut and lengthen it, but it's enormous. I mean, I've adjusted Demelza to my proportions. I do need to check the waist length, but you can see, can you see? Yes, you can. It's a good 5 inches past the bottom of the body of the dummy, so really that's almost night dress length. But again, it's straight-sided, the hem is straight, so I thought I'd sew it all up, and when it comes to doing the hem, I can just chop the bottom off, no problem. That might have been something I should have measured before I cut it out, because as I mentioned, I was quite tight for fabric, but that's kind of the point of a wearable toile, isn't it? You just have a go. So yeah, I did most of this. Well, I cut it out. I traced it and cut it out last weekend. And then I panic sewed a bit last night. Today is Friday the 13th, although I'll be releasing this podcast Saturday morning. And there is nothing like thinking to yourself, I have got nothing to show my podcast viewers to make you actually get on with it and sew it. And what was making me a bit nervous, it's a new pattern to me, which is okay. I've never sewn a collar before, and this does have a collar. Now, admittedly, it's a self-faced, there's no collar stand or anything like that. It's a soft fold back collar. So it was a good beginner collar to try, but that's what was making me nervous. And also I was running a bit low on interfacing, so I knew I was going to have to jigsaw that together, and Anyway, I made a cup of tea the size of my head, got the children fed, and I dumped them in front of the television, and then I did some sewing. So yeah, at some point these will fold back, so it's like a double lapel. But yeah, I think I've done most of the hard work now. I've basted the collar on. I didn't get as far as actually stitching that on last night. It got to 10 o'clock at night and I was starting to see double. So I think knowing when to walk away from a craft project is important. I'm all for unpicking and having a do-over, but if it can be avoided with a little common sense, that's probably for the best. So that's as far as I've got. I haven't cut the shorts out yet at all. I just wanted to crack on with the sewing. So I'm pretty confident I'll have that finished to show you by next episode. And then hopefully making the full set, will be super quick because I'll know all the adjustments and I'll have made the pattern before. So there we are. On to needles, my knitting bit. I have a half finished object. This is my vintage fairy lights sock. And you see, look, these bits are supposed to look like fairy lights. Now this is a pattern by Helen Stewart of the Curious Handmade podcast. And the yarn is Hedgehog Fibres High Twist Sock in the colourway Heyday. I cast these on Christmas Eve for the Little Bobbins Christmas Eve cast on. It has a hashtag which I'll pop up on the screen. Do search on Instagram for it if you're on there. There are so many beautiful projects. It was such a lovely idea to have a mass cast on. I showed you most of a sock last time, but it was too small. I had to rip it out. There is only one size of this in the pattern. It's a 64 stitch cast on, and that's too small for me. So these are a 72 stitch cast on, and to compensate for having a few more stitches than I would normally use, I went down to a 2mm needle. Couldn't get the bleeding thing on, could I? And I was down to the heel flat, but I ripped it all out, and it is a lovely pattern to knit. The fairy light section is so much fun. So I cast it on again, and I went with the suggested needle size in the pattern, which is 2.5. And they're a bit too big. I don't usually do attention square for sock knitting. I've knit so many. My my tension is consistent, but this time it came back to bite me. But it's fine. I mean, it's a ribbed leg and foot, so that's not a problem. And I did a heel, flap and gusset. Basically, I used the pattern to get through the fairy lights, and then I just did my own thing, my own heel, my own toe. So if this is different in the pattern, I wouldn't even know. I didn't read that far. So heel, flap and gusset, and where I did the decreases, I do love a gusset decrease line, look at that. Basically, I decreased down to 70 stitches. So it's 72 up here, and I decreased down to 70 on the foot, just to tighten it up around my foot so it wouldn't be irritatingly baggy. And it meant I had more stitches on the top of the foot than I did on the bottom. So when it came down to the toe, I moved 2 of the top stitches to the bottom, one at either end of the needle, and then did some slightly asymmetrical decreases. I basically finagled it until it fit. But anyway, so that's my first sock. I am keeping these in my fabulous project by My Crafty Dream, and that is how far I've got on the second one. So I've done the heel and I've finished the gusset, and I'm just cruising down the foot now, and I'm knitting it obviously double pointed needles, and I wanted to mark which needle was the start of the round, but I don't like having to slip a marker all the time. It interrupts my flow. So what I tend to do instead is I use a progress keeper. This is one that Jenny gave me, and I just pop it on the fabric so I know when I get to the dangly bit, that's the front needle. So I'm really, really enjoying these. Now I've figured out the pattern. It's just brainless, which is pretty good. I don't have much brain. By the time I've finished all this work shenanigans, I'm pretty dead. So I've been enjoying this very much. And the yarn, it's the first time I've used Hedgehog fibres. I love it. I love it so much. It's also my first ever speckled yarn, so I'm really enjoying which colour comes up next. I think my husband might be getting a bit irritated that I keep telling him which colour is coming up next, but you know, you have to live with it. If you live with a knitter, that's the price you pay. So, socks. Next up is my knitting Newfangled make-along. This is in my lovely Nelly Welly project bag. Again, she's donated a prize for the Newfangled make-along as well. Now, my new technique for this was brioche. There is a lovely brioche shawl pattern that I want to make, but I've never done it before, so I decided to make the Deco mug mat by Knit Graffiti Designs, just to get my hand in and learn the techniques. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll have seen that I was really struggling with this. Oh God. Basically, I ripped and re-knit the first 5 or 6 rows 3 times before I managed to get the hang of it. And then when I got into some of the decreases, I mucked that up as well. I looked up some technique videos on brioche, and I've started 2 new threads in the Ravelry group, one sewing techniques, one knitting techniques, and I've put the brioche videos in that knitting techniques thread. Very clear videos, really nice, but they're only useful if you watch right to the end. So hopefully that will save some of you from making my mistakes. Anyway, these are my 2 yarns. The purple is some handspun of mine I've had for ages, and the green is some Debbie Blis Rialto 4-ply. Can't remember the colour, just scraps. And the purple is my main colour and the green is the contrast. I'm knitting these on Brittany 3mm double points, and these are made of birchwood. Now, I'm not usually a fan of these needles. They're very grippy, which mostly drives me nuts. But for Fair Isle, or for a new technique, if I'm trialing something out, I do quite like them. For Fair Isle, again, you can space you work out along the needles to keep the floats nice and even. And for brioche, again, I could spread my stitches out so I could trace up the lines and I could see very clearly what my different stitches were. So I have actually nearly finished. This is how far I've got. So this is the main colour side, and I've gone through all the decreases and increases section, and you can see now I'm just into the garter stitch section by here. I've got probably another 20 rows to go. Let me show you the contrast side, and I like this better. I think that the purple handspun wasn't the best choice. It is a slightly heathered or marled yarn. It's a little bit thick and thin, which I don't think matters, but the colour inconsistency made the design, I don't know, it's just not showing up as much as I like. So I think when I come to use this, this is the side that I will use. So yeah, there we go. As I said, I ripped it out a lot when I first started, and Dave was laughing at me because I needed complete silence. I was muttering the instructions as I went, and then I'd get cross, rip it all out, stuff it back in the bag and do something else instead. So yes, there are a few of us that are brioche mug rugging along. Jenny's already finished hers. That's in the finished objects thread if you want to have a look. And hopefully I can get mine done over the next couple of days. I'll probably try and cast my brioche shawl on fairly promptly so I don't forget it. Was there anything else? Yes, in the pattern, which is very well written indeed, they have written instructions and charted instructions. Now, normally I would always go with the charts, cables or lace. I like the charts. I like visually being able to see how the stitches stack up, but obviously the chart symbols for brioche are very different. And because I was still a bit unsure of the stitches themselves, just having the chart symbol and the key wasn't enough. I needed the written out stitch instructions, so I stuck with the line by line written directions. Hopefully by the time I get to do the shawl I'll be a bit more up to speed, so I'll certainly give the charts a go then. But yeah, otherwise I'm very pleased. It's nice and squishy, and I am very glad I went with fingering weight yarn. The pattern calls for DK, but it would be enormous. It would be like a tablecloth. So if you're going to have a go, maybe consider fingering weight yarn. So that was that one. So by the time it got to Christmas, actually Christmas Day, I had pretty much finished my obligation knitting. I talked about this last episode, but there were some mitts and some colourwork mittens that I was dragging my heels on, so I pushed through. My Christmas Eve cast on socks were my reward, and then I was looking forward to my Newfangled cast-ons and sew-ons in January. I do still have one obligation knit left to finish. He is looking a little freaky at the moment. Do you remember Bangers the sausage dog that I knit for Sammy? I have another sausage dog to do because Bangers has a best mate, and this is as far as I've got. So this is Bangers' friend's head, and I've used stitch markers to mark where the eyeballs need to be sewn on, so he is looking a little bit strange at the moment. This is a pattern, you can buy it on Ravelry, by Amanda Berry, and I am knitting these for the son of a friend of mine who is obsessed with a particular story that has these sausage dogs in, and it's a newly released book and there are no matching toys, so I'm making one. So yeah, I've got as far as the head. I have started an ear. There's the ear. Now these are all these pieces are knit flat and seamed, and basically you knit this ear and then when you've finished you fold it in half and sew it up. It's a bit hard to show you. And there's a bit more of an ear shape. I'm changing parts of the pattern only in so far as colours are concerned to make sure that he matches the dog in the story. Let me show you a picture for those of you who haven't seen him before. There we are. Bang as the sausage dog. So I'll be doing black ears because the story dog has black ears. And also he has a Fair Isle jumper. It's a cream Fair Isle jumper with navy patterning on it. Now, as I said, the body of this dog, all the pieces are knit flat and seamed. I did consider doing it in the round, but to be honest, it's just as fiddly with so few stitches on the needles as it is to sew it up at the end. But if I wanted to do a proper Fair Isle body for this second dog, I would be doing Fair Isle flat. So purling on the wrong side rows with 2 different colours. I'd need to find a pattern from a stitch dictionary, make sure the stitch count matched. And to be honest, I'm afraid that's a bit much for me at the moment. So I'll be doing some stripes. I might do some every other stitch. I'll have to see how it goes, but there will be some sort of patterning on there, and hopefully Sammy will forgive me. I'm using Hayfield Bonus DK. It's a 100% acrylic yarn, just to make sure that it's washable. So if anything gets dropped on it or he gets kicked around or played with till he's grubby, he can just go in the washing machine. So yes, cracking on with sausage dog number 2. And that's all I've got on my needles at the moment. I do have grand plans, but again, keep your eyes peeled for my vlogs, which I'll do hopefully in the next week or so. Because I want to get organised. I've got things printed out, I've got notes made with lists and hashtags. So yeah, I want to get on with that. Last of all is a section I haven't had for a while. It's my Two's Company section. And this is basically where I give you a bit of a heads up about interesting articles or podcasts that I've found. There might be new things or technique related, anything like that. And I've got 4 things for you this week. First up is a new podcaster. I have to say this carefully. It's called So She Show. You can find her on YouTube, and her name is Shona. She's a British sewing podcaster, and she's so much fun. She's not been going terribly long, but has wonderful taste in fabric, makes some really lovely things. She's got a craft room tour on there. She's done some January plan videos as well. So if you fancy another sewing podcast, go and find So She Show on YouTube. She's the same on Instagram, and she has a blog at soshishow.co.uk. Again, all of the links are down below. The second thing I wanted to recommend, I've mentioned an audio podcast before. It's called the Craftish audio podcast, and that's by a lady called Vickie Howell. I have that. I listen to it on Podcast Republic, and I listen to lots of different ones. I download the episodes, and they keep me company while I'm sewing or when I'm commuting to work on the train. And Craftish covers all sorts of arts and crafts topics. So there's knitting and sewing, there's journalism, there's fiction writers, artists. It's a wonderful resource. But I particularly wanted to mention episode 21, where Vickie interviews, and I'm going to butcher this name, and I'm sorry, she interviews Ray Hoekstra, who is the Ray of Made by Ray. I'm sure you've heard of that. She's Made by Ray on Instagram, and she has a website as well. And she, if you've heard of the washi dress pattern, that's quite popular with podcasters as well. And it was a really interesting interview. Ray used to be a physics teacher, and when she became a mum, she decided to leave teaching and become a full-time mum. And she discusses how she moved from physics teacher to mum to sewist, blogger and pattern designer. And it's a fascinating process. You hear about how she works, and you also hear about how she felt about herself transitioning from earning to stay-at-home mum and then trying to balance family and work life as well. So episode 21 of the Craftish podcast, give that a listen. And then I've got 2 knitting recommendations for you. The first one is a YouTube podcast. It's called The Little Tailoress. And that is a lovely lady called Amy, another Brit. She used to have, well, she still has, a blog which you might have read, but it went quiet for a bit because she had children. Children do get in the way. But she's a similar podcast to mine in that it's knitting and sewing. So if you like that mix, do go and check her out. And in her last episode, she did mention that she was going to start introducing snippets of furniture upcycling and drawing with coloured pencils. So I'm really looking forward to just having some slightly different crafts to have a look at. So yeah, The Little Tailoress, Instagram, YouTube, go and have a look. And then another podcast is called the Stranded podcast, and that is Amy Edwards Green. She's Stranded Dyeworks on Etsy because she's a yarn dyer. She's Amy Florence on Ravelry and Instagram, and she also has a Stranded podcast group on Ravelry. I only found her yesterday, and she's an absolute hoot. She's so much fun, has lovely yarns, yeah, I really recommend giving her a watch. I've subscribed, and I'll be looking forward to her adventures. So I hope you'll find some of those interesting. Again, links are down below. And if you've got a bit of time with a cup of tea, do check one of them out. That's all I've got for you this week. I hope the lighting was a bit better. I'm so sorry about that. Well, it really was awful last episode, but I couldn't refilm it, I'm afraid. So yes, thank you ever so much for watching. Don't forget to come and join us in the Ravelry group, or just start making along. Use the hashtag Newfangled Make Along. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Click subscribe so that you don't have to hunt for me every 2 weeks. I'll just pop up in your subscription list. And that's about it, really. I hope you've had a fantastic new year. I hope 2017 brings you happiness and health and lots of time for crafting. And I will see you soon. Bye.